to the Spirit in Mind broadcast with your hosts, Bishop C. Guy Robinson and Dr. Jonathan Shepherd, where we explore faith and mental health perspectives on current affairs. Let's get into today's discussion with the Spirit in Mind.
Well, great day, everyone, and welcome to Spirit in Mind, where we discuss current affairs with faith and mental health perspectives. I'm Bishop Guy Robinson, and as always, I am honored to have this time to share with our Spirit in Mind family and with Dr. Shepherd. Great day, Dr. Shepherd.
Yes, Bishop. How are you, sir?
All is well here. I trust you've had a good week.
It has been, and I hope for all our visitors and viewers out there, more viewers than visitors and family, I pray that it's been a good week for you all too. Just much to do within our profession, within ministry, and just thankful for another opportunity to be on this broadcast.
Absolutely. Spirit in Mind family, we do so appreciate you, and we're grateful for your presence. And I know that many of you are already connected, but as Dr. Shepherd just said, sometimes we have some first-time visitors. Someone may be watching a rebroadcast of this Spirit in Mind, and we just value connection. So we want to always take the time to give our means of connecting with us because it's all about connection. And that's why we do what we do. It's a very relational effort that we have here on Spirit in Mind. And so Dr. Shepherd normally gives us contact information and keeps you updated. So listen, hang in there with us if you're already connected. And for those who may be watching for the first time, Dr. Shepherd's going to help you see how we can stay connected.
Absolutely. And Bishop, it's just been a tremendous outpour as people continue to reach out. Many of them are looking for direct care services or looking for some guidance or assistance as they're struggling with their own particular mental health disorder that's occurring within their own individual lives or their families. And you can reach out to both of us. You can reach me via email, jshep2471@gmail.com. My office number there, which provides assistance for direct care services through Hope Health Systems. You can reach me there. Also, my social media pages, Facebook, YouTube. You can find previous episodes, contact me through that avenue also. Also learn about some other mental health topics that I have been able to discuss previously. So do that. Check out the website, drjonathanshepherd.com. And I will gladly get back to you as soon as possible. Also, Bishop C. Guy Robinson, you can contact him through his various modes of information. There you have email address for Bishop, office numbers. Please go and visit, like, share on his social media platforms. You can hear Mental Health Minutes. You can go to YouTube. Look at some of his previous sermons at conferences, all of that good stuff. And so it will just bless you. Reach out to us. We do our best to answer as soon as possible. I know there's been people who've struggled with things in the past as a particular show may hit home for you and you're looking for additional services. This is part of our job. This is part of our ministry, and we'll gladly serve you. Thank you.
Absolutely, Dr. Shepherd. We're grateful for the connection, and we would be remiss if we didn't mention that this is Mental Health Month, and so what a great time, if ever, to really make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, spirit, soul, and body, as 1 Thessalonians 5:23 gives that holistic approach to our wellness. May the God of peace preserve you, spirit, soul, and body. And so we're grateful for connection. Thank you, Spirit in Mind family. It's chiming in and making your presence known. And we're so grateful you're with us today and always. So listen, we've been talking about Well, it's kind of been a thread, Dr. Shepherd. I was thinking it kind of all is seamlessly going one into another. We started off this year talking about planning and dealing with frustrated plans and the disconnect between expectations and experience, and how that can trigger some feelings of loss, even as we sometimes have to grieve the loss of an expectation when an experience is different than what we expected. We have to recalibrate and adjust to some differences between those. That took us into talking about relationships and forgiveness, and we that glory cloud just kind of hovered, and we stayed there for a while. In a sense, you could say we're still there, and that took us into discussing trauma triggers, and most recently, we've been talking about maximizing capacity. And Dr. Shepherd will give us those amazing medical analogies as he feels led. We talked a little bit about lung capacity and blockages. And I just thought that was so powerful, Dr. Shepherd, how really the Lord used you to share that, because it relates. I connected it to the World Health Organization mental health definition, first of which is that ability to realize our potential, to function at maximum capacity at some point, which means we may have to remove some blockers. And so those medical analogies, man, I know you know this, but as you were talking, I was thinking, man, there is so much revelation in biology and medical principles. You could really see the handiwork of God as you were sharing. So anywhere there you want to pick up, and we'll go from there, because it's all bottlenecking. It's been so good. So Dr. Shepherd, catch us up from there.
Yes, Bishop. So what we left off with, if you've been following us, we've been talking about post-traumatic growth, being able to grow after the trauma. And that really spilled over from the forgiveness piece. We were talking about how it's been difficult for people to grow many times because they have not been able to forgive, and what forgiveness looks like. And also just re-emphasizing to people that you can grow after trauma. It requires a mindset. It requires a specific type of mindset. And where we left off is going through this acronym CRAM, and it talks about how do you access for capacity to grow. And we went through just the first two letters, CRAM, the C and the R. And thank you, Minister Kett, our engineer, for pulling this up, and leave it there for just a few minutes here. When you say CRAM, you're looking at something that packs tightly. It's also, if you want to think about it this way, when you're filling yourself up with food until you're satisfied. It's to prepare hastily for examination. And so when you look at how we are assessing for capacity, we're looking to pack this thing in tightly because we want to be able to grow. We want to be able to expand. We want to be satisfied, and we want to prepare for the exam that the Lord has coming for us. Many of us are already in it because the pandemic has shown us that time is not waiting for any of us. It's time to fulfill the purpose. And I want to make sure that as we're assessing for capacity, that we're looking to see, Lord, where is it that you want me to grow? Where are those areas where you want me to grow in? And one of the things that I did not mention as we started this particular acronym, a particular topic on assessment for capacity, is I pulled this from a scientific journal, from an article. This is not something I just pulled from another book or even from the Bible. It's just amazing, as Bishop was referencing earlier, how science the Lord has allowed for us to see science and be able to pull from it and just to see the handiwork. But it also gives you a sense of how doctors are thinking. Doctors are ones who are always assessing, should be always assessing for growth always assessing on how to be able to determine what's happening within a person. So treatment can involve growing. That's what treatment's about, how to grow the person from the particular illness or diagnosis that they have to wellness. And so with this particular journal, the first C was, if you're going to look for capacity to grow, is communicate a choice. Go through these real briefly, and then Bishop will add any additional comments. But the first C that we went over was communicate a choice. And in communicating a choice, you have to make a decision. Make a decision. Do I remain a product of the trauma, or do I take the experience and grow from it? So when you look at it from the scientific viewpoint, in particular, this assessment was made by OBGYN, as this person is providing counseling to a woman who is considering an abortion. That is so amazing, because abortion is one of those hot button topics right now. Has always been, but as you know, with what's happening within our society right now, how abortion has just risen to the really one of the top topics that you hear now on TV. And this person was helping this mother to make a decision, to communicate a decision about, does she remain in this particular state of pregnancy, or does she decide to end the pregnancy because of whatever led to the pregnancy? It could have been a rape, it could have been elective, it doesn't matter. It could have been a good thing, could have been a bad thing. But what we're saying is, when a person's considering a decision such as this, you must be able to communicate a choice. For those who may have had an abortion, you know, that it can be a very traumatic thing. There are various reasons why people may have an abortion. They may have had to do it because to save their own life, or knowing that having the child could have actually allowed the child to experience great pain and suffering and not even live on this earth for just a few days. There's so many different factors that go into this decision. And it really ties in nicely to what we're talking about regarding trauma and post-traumatic growth, because some of us have gotten stuck because of the seriousness and of the hurt and the pain that we've gone through. And we have to communicate that choice. I talked a little bit about how we can communicate a choice through our verbal responses and our nonverbal responses. We have to be able to walk it through with our verbal and nonverbal language. Number two, the R, and I'll end here, is understanding the relevant information. And that word relevant means significant, demonstrable evidence of the matter at hand. That means that it's significant, demonstrable evidence of the matter at hand. So that means that you take time to point out or parcel out the facts of the event versus the distorted opinions of why it happened. Once again, if you look at this from the standpoint of this particular article for the woman considering an abortion, she may have not been using protection when she had sexual encounters, or she may have been, again, violated. And some people say a woman may have been asking for a violation, which is just so wrong. I've heard so many people say that over the years, and say that, well, she deserved it because of how she was carrying herself or wearing certain clothing and things like that. I hear you out there. Some of you are saying you didn't deserve to be traumatized. But yet you end up finding yourself traumatized because of what happened. That's so significant. Where I've heard what people say, Dr. Shepherd, I didn't know that this was going to lead to this trauma. I didn't know that this was going to happen. And you find yourself trying to figure out the facts versus the opinions. And so that is so important when you're talking about moving forward. Help me to understand what the true facts are versus what the distorted opinions of why it happened. One of the things that, as I was reading, is a quote that says that our stories have an emotional soundtrack to them. Oh man, that's just so significant. You know, our literally our narratives. If we could play back, there's a Shepherd soundtrack with each trauma that has occurred. Some of ours might be more dramatic than others. It might be, sound of doom and horror more than others. But there's an emotional soundtrack attached to our stories. And if we're not careful, our emotions will distort the narrative of that trauma. And so because of that, we want to understand what the significant, demonstrable evidence of the matters at hand are versus those distorted opinions. Bishop, I want to stop right there. That's where we left off. A little bit longer than what I had planned, but wanted to make sure everybody was caught up to where we are.
It's very much worth recapping because again, I think we used this analogy last time to like being in the gym. This can sometimes take a few times to go over. It's sort of like if you got a new workout routine or if you just start working out, get right in the gym and it doesn't come naturally. Or if you take dance lessons or piano lessons, you're working your scales, for you musically inclined people. At first, it doesn't come naturally. Do, re, mi, fa. But the more you do it and the more you apply it, the more natural it becomes. Mm-hmm. And so that's rehearsal and practicing. Musically, you kind of make a distinction between those. Practicing is working on those technical skills and how to cross over my fingers and or get my notes right. That's practicing done in private. Rehearsing is rehearing it, as the word literally applies, and reproducing what I hear. And so as we're sharing these principles, I'm going to transfer them to this concept of post-traumatic growth, that it is a practice, a rehearing, and recalling it to mind, as Jeremiah said in Lamentations, this I recall to mind, therefore I have hope. And so repetition, Jesus often said to his disciples, I counted through the scriptures how many times Jesus says, and again I say to you. Jesus used the art of repetition so that it could become a part of our being. And so I think these recaps are important, particularly that part about assessing relevance and sticking to the matter at hand. That's easier said than done. Woo. Because that means, as you said, we already got a soundtrack. And when you use that musical analogy, it reminded me of another principle, because that's just how we are, in music studies and even in listening and in auditory disciplines. It is known that we don't always 100% hear everything. We fill in the gaps. Mm. There are moments when, like on the scale, if I just use that do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, I stop, but somewhere in your head, you're going Tito, and we fill in where the gaps are. A lot of times when we read, we fill in the gaps. You're not reading every word letter by letter. We're saying, I've seen that before. And we're associating past connections with present activities. And we do that even when we're processing emotions. So when I'm going through this situation, sticking to the matter at hand requires some serious discipline and analysis and introspection so that I don't conflate what's going on now with what happened in another relationship or at another job, because all of that is conflated in there and part of my recollection. So sorting through that is the work. That's the workout. And saying, yeah, I understand, but this is not that. I'm sticking to the matter at hand. That takes some work. So that's why we're going through these things very strategically, because again, it's easy to say, But it's one thing to give intellectual assent to something. It's another thing to actually make it a part of our practice so that it becomes more and more fluent as we go. So we only got to the communication and relevance. Dr. Shepherd, let's get to the A and the M of the cram.
All right. So we got communicate, relevance. Let's go to now appreciate. Appreciate the situation and its consequences. And so, as you can imagine, a young lady or even an older woman who's in childbearing age, appreciating the situation where she finds herself in. And the doctor is working with her to determine where the status of the pregnancy is at. And, you know, certain states, they have certain laws where abortions are not allowed after a certain length of gestation. Sometimes you cannot do something after the second trimester. Sometimes you can't do something after the first trimester. But you must appreciate where the situation is. And so when you look at the appreciation, you have to understand or know the price that's paid to experience the traumatic event. Now, I can hear someone say, "Well, Dr. Shepherd, you know, is the particular illustration that you're giving in this journal is that a traumatic event?" Well, I've never experienced an abortion myself, as I'm a male person, but I've been there when I've had to help in a decision and even in the operating room for a woman who had to have literally a stillborn baby born. The baby had died within her, and we had to go in and evacuate the womb. It's called a DNC. And I'm sorry, not a DNC for her. It was a DNE, dilate and evacuation. And so, which is very different from a DNC. DNE is a dilate evacuation after the child has been deemed already dead, but still yet within the womb. And that really is something to think about. But when you look at that particular experience, there's a price that is paid with that particular traumatic event. And understanding what that price is and appreciating that. And so it's the doctor's responsibility before going forward with the decision that the person understands what they're getting themselves into. You have to understand that there's a price that's paid for each decision. There's a price that's paid even for the traumatic event that you've experienced, even if it's not your own fault. And I know, Bishop, that's where a lot of people struggle. Well, I ain't asked for this, Bishop, and I didn't do this. And believe me, I get it. But just because we didn't ask for it, that doesn't mean that the price paid goes away. So there's a price that is paid to experience a traumatic event. And then you have to know its value and its worth. Because you can pay the price, but yet, as we're trying to help people to grow through it, there's a value and there's a worth with it. So we appreciate the situation, know its consequences, and then you have to be mindful of the side effects. So for that person who may want to have an elective abortion or some type of procedure or something that could cause one not to be in the current state that they're in right now, know that there are consequences, that there's possible consequences that go along with that particular event. That happens when you have an elective surgery or even a surgery that is life-saving. It is required for the surgeon to go over the possible side effects. And sometimes these side effects could be 1%, 2%. You know, I was just working with a particular family, and the father had, I believe he had a valve replaced, some type of heart surgery. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something that they didn't expect for him to have any complications with. Well, sure enough, he ended up having a complication where one of the veins due to the surgery got clotted. And because of that, it ended up extending the rehabilitation of that particular person much longer. Why am I mentioning this? Because it was the surgeon's responsibility to mention the possible side effects that will have occurred with that particular procedure. That's why we have this show. That's why you need a pastor, honestly, because when you make certain decisions, it is the job of the pastor, through the leading of the Lord, to let you know what the possible side effects or what your possible consequences are if you do something that could be positive or negative. Consequences doesn't always have to be negative. You know, people hear consequences. Oh my God, it's negative, it's bad. No, there's positive results. You sow what you reap. If you sowing good stuff, you're going to reap good stuff. But that's why you need a leader who can feed you, so help you to appreciate the situation. You can have a leader who can appreciate and show you what those consequences could be, because when you understand the consequences and how important they are with respect to the power of them, then that can produce, hopefully, a result or the effect that you desire. So that's what I want to talk about regarding that A. As you're expanding your growth, accessing the capacity to grow, understanding the situation, appreciating the situation and its consequences. Bishop, take us further. Hopefully that charged and people and help them to understand what that A stands for.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciating the situation, assessing. The scripture that comes to mind immediately for it is Luke 14, when Jesus says, "Don't follow me," or who builds a house without thinking about and counting up the cost. It's not just the emotional building of a house, but sitting down and thinking, what type of house do I want to build? How do I want it to look? And what is that going to cost in terms of time, treasury, all those kind of things, going into weighing all of those options. I think that's so very important, and I'm glad we're using a host of illustrations, because different illustrations may move you one way or another. Don't get lost in an illustration and miss the principle. I had during my early days as a licentiate minister, my pastor helped me out with that so very much. He's like, sometimes make sure that your illustration does not lose the point of what you want people to get, because sometimes your illustration can be on point, but it can be too graphic or too controversial for a person to move beyond that. That's so right. If some of them are too graphic for you, you can't get past that particular illustration. We're offering a couple of ones. So here's the house building one. Sit down and calculate the cost. What kind of house do I want to build? How do I want it to look? Because the principle is that we're not just making emotionally driven decisions, but we are making a decision to grow, first of all. That's the communication, and we're assessing the relevant information to this moment. So, and that's the point. And the illustrations are to help give you examples of the process, but don't let the picture cause you to miss the process. You could put any number of these questions in there. We've been talking about forgiveness. I need to assess whether I should reinstate this person completely to the status that they had before the offense. Because that goes back to all the different areas of social space and personal space. And so I'm reassessing what kind of house am I building now? Where am I going to fit this person back in? You still need to go through the cram process. Should I leave my job and start my own business? You still need to go through the cram process, and you still need to appreciate the situation, which means count it up. Another, I don't know if we have the scripture, but example that came to mind was 2 Kings 7:3, where you're assessing or appreciating the situation. Listen to these 4 lepers. There's a famine going on. It's a life-threatening situation, and they weighing out their options. If you put that scripture up, it says there were 4 leprous men at the entrance of the gate. They said to one another, "Why are we sitting here until we die? If we say we will enter the city, the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. If we sit here, we die also. Now, therefore, come, let us surrender to the army of the Syrians. If they keep us alive, we shall live." So I wanted to emphasize, look at what they're doing, appreciating the different scenarios. We got basically 3 options. We can enter the city where the famine is. We can sit here and die, or we can go into the enemy's camp. Basically, that's the 3 options. And so what they're doing really is trying to really appreciate the situation and arrive at a point of what is really acceptable risk.
Mm.
That's really what it is. And I know that rubs some of us in the wrong way because we really like to operate with certainty.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bible is true when it says we live by faith.
By faith. Wow.
Just accept that principle, but really it is given unto every man a measure of faith, because very few things do we do in this life with certainty. I stumbled upon, y'all see, I'm a bookworm and a nerd and a perpetual student. I stumbled across some of my old notes from a doctoral studies in statistics class. And it occurred to me how little certainty we have in this life.
Mm.
Statistics is all about the fact that much of what we do is not with certainty as much as it is statistical inference or statistical probability, which always means, and I started looking at my notes and my professor talking about standard deviation in the equation and margin of error, because there's always missing information and variable factors, because much of life is filled with variables and miscalculations, and you always have to account for standard deviations and margins of error, because very little in this life is by absolute certainty. It is by assessing risk and saying which one is the most acceptable risk decision that I'm going to make. Let me make it very plain. It could be if I say I'm going to go to the store. The truth is, I got to get in the car. There is a level of risk with that. So I'm either going to stay here and starve or not get supplies, or I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to take the risk of sitting here and starving, or I'm going to take the risk of going to the store. And the question is, looking at those options, which one is the acceptable risk or contains acceptable risk given my circumstances? And that's what it means to assess the situation. A lot of times we want absolute certainty that this is going to be exactly what it is. But much of what we do as human beings is living by faith, because faith is how we fill in the gaps between the information we have and our lack of epistemological certainty concerning the future. So one way or another, you got to live by faith.
Yeah.
So assessing that risk, appreciating the situation, like these lepers, they said, we could sit here and die. We could go in the city and hang out and die there with the other people dying. There's no food in there. And there's no food sitting right here. We can go into the enemy's camp, and there's still a chance that we could die, but there's also a chance that we could live. So where is the greatest opportunity for growth? Is the question. Not the absolute certainty, but the absolute greatest possibility for growth. And that's where I make the faith move. And so that's where that appreciate the situation comes so helpful for me spiritually. We live by faith. There's always an element of faith, There's always a margin of error in any equation that you come up with. There's always more statistical inference and probability than there is statistical certainty or absolute certainty. There's always a section of not otherwise specified. There's always an area of the standard deviation. At some point, we just have to say this is the acceptable risk. And another word for risk is faith, is where I choose to move out by faith and make this decision. And so that's where that appreciate the situation, meaning appreciate that there's a level of faith involved in every decision we make.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Bishop, for saying that. And I want people to understand that in the scientific world, physicians or those who work in medicine or just in healthcare, we work according to that faith principle. Yes, we do. I'm reading right now the book Illogical by Emmanuel Acho. I mentioned his name prior on another show about uncomfortable conversations with Black men, but I'm reading this book now, and it just, as I listen to him, he's really talking about the faith component. And I look at this even from the scientific eyes, that if you want to be able to grow, there is a certain amount of risk that must be involved. You must have faith, and you must be able to appreciate that. Let me tell you, if you want to be able to move from being stuck after a traumatic event to post-traumatic growth, it's going to take your ability to understand that it's a faith move, it's a risk move, and it will not feel comfortable. Let me tell you, you're putting your hands in the hands of another person when you are looking at assessing for a surgery. And I keep bringing that up, or some type of move that involves another person to help you to overcome that traumatic event or overcome whatever illness or thing that might be inside of you, or wanting to move forward after you've been injured. There are people who've been injured, Bishop, who say, you know what, I don't want to have the surgery. I've seen where people have been injured and they can't move anymore, but that was a decision that they made because they didn't trust the people who could have helped them to repair the injury. And I've literally seen where people said, you know what, I'll leave it alone. I'm good. And I'll just stay in my deformed position because of the injury, as opposed to appreciating the situation, knowing that there's some consequences that may happen. Yes, because even though the surgeon says that we can correct the bone, we can put the thing back together, but there's going to be a rehabilitation period that's going to be a lot of pain and a lot of work, and knowing what the consequences could be. And people may say, you know what, that's not what I want. That's why it takes time as we go through this growth process. It really is a growth process. That's why anyone who is assessing for whatever procedure it may be, we just don't say sign it up and just say, okay, go ahead and do it. We want to understand that people know what they're getting themselves into. And as we apply this to our ability to grow, we want you all to know we hear you, we empathize with you, we sympathize, we understand, we comprehend. But we also want you to know that in doing so, we want to say it's gonna be some tough days ahead. It just really resonates within me, Bishop. I just kind of feel that there's gonna be some tough days ahead. You think about Jesus Christ, and then I'll get ready to move on to the next point. When he went to the cross, and we as believers, Christian believers, we have to appreciate that he didn't just decide to go to the cross one day, just because because, I came down because my father wanted me to come down to save the world. Jesus agonized through that decision. And as you study how Jesus went through that, we physicians, when I go into work every day, I've been telling people this, I agonize about how I'm going to move forward and being able to help somebody, knowing that what I prescribe, knowing that what I'm treating, knowing that what I may be prescribing, preachers, as you're delivering sermons, as you're delivering counseling words or whatever it is, caring for you agonize over that because you know that your word can help direct somebody in a positive or negative manner, and then you appreciate and know that there's some consequences that do come along once you have made that decision.
But Dr. Shepherd, real quick, I know we got to get to the last one, but what you just said, iron sharpens iron. I just want to say, because you used a powerful illustration. You used one of surgical risk and that kind of thing and assessing. And what it brought to mind is this: in leadership coaching, we call that decision. You have to make a decision whether we are playing to win or playing not to lose. That's what we call it in leadership coaching. That's a powerful. And we said, what's the difference? Well, it's so now here's my decision-making process as I am assessing and taking in. Am I about to make this decision from a place of defense or a place of offense? And I had I won't say, but I had somebody who likes a rival football team, and one day he said that to me. He said, the team you like, I'm not going to say it, but y'all know where I live. He said, the team where you like built this name off of defense and playing not to lose, but we play to win.
Wow.
And here's the difference. He said, here's the difference. Let's use the analogies I just used. If I'm playing not to lose, then this versus playing to win depends on what I focus on in my decision. My decision about the market and groceries and my hunger is driven by avoiding an automobile accident, then I'm playing not to lose, to avoid something I don't want to happen. So I'm playing not to lose, but in playing not to lose, I'm staying in the house. That's versus making a decision that I'm going after the groceries. It's focused on what I can gain instead of what I can lose. That's the difference in coaching between, am I playing not to lose or am I playing to win? So it's the difference between staying home to avoid an automobile accident or going after the groceries. It's the difference between making a decision to avoid the surgical risk or to pursue the healing. It's the difference between making a decision to avoid the embarrassment or pursuing the success of my recital or public speaking engagement. Are you playing not to lose or are you playing to win? Here's the pattern. Playing not to lose will keep me stagnant. It'll keep me in the house. It'll keep me trying to avoid stuff. It's about playing to win. Doesn't mean I'm not aware of the risk, but it means I'm also aware of the reward, and I have made a decision that I'm going after the reward. Paul put it this way: for I reckon, don't miss, he's assessing the situation. He's doing acceptable risk. He's appreciating the situation. For I reckon that the sufferings are not worthy to be compared with the glory. I'm aware of the sufferings, but I'm not playing not to lose. I'm playing to win. I'm playing for the glory. I'm playing to maximize my capacity and potential.
Wow.
So that makes a decision that affects my decision making, because if I'm from an anxious place, then I'm overly focused on what could go wrong and it's affecting my decisions. You may still decide that and you're comfortable. That means you have to be comfortable saying, I never left the house. I ain't got no groceries, whatever. I'll make do with what's in the kitchen. I'll put 2 boiled eggs on the stove because I'm playing not to lose. But I'm also, if that's what you focused on, the other person is like, I know there's eggs in there and I know it's a risk out there, but if I do this right, I'm coming home with whatever you like, pizza, chicken, steak, whatever. so what you focus on will affect your decision. And that's where your mindset is. And that's where unresolved trauma and everything can come in, because we'll start playing not to lose. What if? And just be aware. I'm not trying to, because you got to make the decision. But that will make the difference between staying home and avoiding an automobile accident or going after the groceries, avoiding the surgical risk or pursuing the healing, avoiding the embarrassment of public stuttering or pursuing the success of a great performance. And so that makes a decision. In the leadership coaching, we call that, are you playing to win or are you playing not to lose?
Wow. Thank you, Bishop. And you said something again. I got to state this. You mentioned something about being a child in one of our previous episodes. And the book, that, as I'm reading it, brought that out. And just how children have just no fear or very little fear. And it's, and you know, and the scriptures talks about, unless you become like a child, you know, you won't be able to inherit the kingdom of heaven. And it really spoke to me as I read in the book, like, wow, because when you look at a child, they're ones who are playing to win. You know, they'll run out and they're ready to go and do whatever it is. They'll climb on whatever it is just to get to it, because there is no fear. And what happens is, as we get older, even by the time we get adolescence, society has already put chains on us. Society has already taught us that, no, you can't do that. No, that's inappropriate. No, that, and that is what will cause you, as you appreciate the situation, to say, you know what, maybe that's not me. And what we want to help you to do is, if we want to grow through this, that's the difference between those who kind of stay in the stands, if you would, as opposed to getting out into the game and actually scoring the touchdown or whatever it is that causes the team to win. We don't want you to be the bystander. We don't want you to be the ones in the stands just cheering. We want you to be out there in the game, moving it forward, that you're out there playing to win, as Bishop said. But I tell you, it takes that childlike mentality. It takes that childlike faith. And so I had to ask Bishop.
That's good. Listen, I know we got to go, but if this were the preaching moment, this is where it would be. This would come into my mind. Y'all preachers, man, I need to work this later. But listen, that what you just said, staying in the stands or being on the field. If it's the text, I would say you got it. And I reach a point in our pursuit of post-traumatic growth, whether we want to be Peter or the other disciples, because playing to not to lose. I'm talking about when they were on the boat and Jesus comes across the water and Peter says, if it's you, bid me to come. And he said, and he went out on that word. Here's the difference. Peter is playing to win. The disciples who stay in the boat are playing not to lose.
Yep.
And so that decide, but the disciples in the boat didn't sink. That's true, but they also never walked on water. Peter's the only one that can say, I walked on water just like Jesus, because I played the win. And what if? And that's where you got to go. Well, what if? But Peter sank. See, you're focusing on the losing thing. That's where you got to, again, have trust that he'll lift you up because your motives were right.
Wow.
So God will honor my faith and my intentions. Like that's that continual decision. So you can stay in the boat. The boat is safe. You won't sink, but you'll also never know what it is to walk on water.
Wow.
Because you played not to lose, but you didn't come to win.
Right. And so, with that said, we're going to move to the last letter for the M, because it's going to help us to put a nice bow on this. And the M stands for let's manipulate the information rationally. Manipulate the information rationally. And rationally means having reason or understanding. And it really flows and puts a nice end to all three of these: communicating a choice, understanding the relevant information, appreciation of the situation and its consequences, and then taking all of that and then saying at the end, help me to manipulate. Manipulate is not a negative word. Many times we use it negatively, but again, it just means able to take the information that we have done. Once we have parceled out the facts, we communicated our choice, and we have appreciated the situation. Now we can make the decision, and we make it with reason and with understanding. Because that's the thing that, honestly, Bishop, I've seen where people have communicated the choice. They understand the facts. They even appreciate the situation, but yet they go left when it comes time to make the rational decision. And so that's why that's very important. We just can't say CRA, whatever that's how you pronounce that, cry, but you need the M for the cram, so that you can complete the thing, so you can manipulate the information with reason and with understanding. And when you say that, it requires a healthy, sound mind. How is it that when we are assessing someone, I used the illustration earlier with regarding abortion, and I know that again for some that might be a little turn off, but again, these are some of the things that the doctor goes through. That after you have assessed the situation, appreciated the consequences, communicated the choice, then it is up to you to take the information, to compile it so you can make a rational decision. And that's how we grow. That's how we know that you have the capacity to grow. Honestly, it is, because now we can see where your mindset is. Some of us, literally, we can take all information. We have all the facts. Some of us are constipated. That's what my youth leader said back when I was younger. She said, Shepherd, you're constipated. I said, what do you mean I'm constipated? You got all this information inside of you. You know you've been studying the word. You've been praying, but you're not applying the information. You're not putting it back out to use. And so that's what I want to tell you all today. Put the information out to you so you can grow, so you can move forward. But also remember, it takes a healthy and sound mind. When your mindset is jacked up, when your mindset is not at peace, when your mindset is one that is tortured, one that is confused, one that is overwhelmed, it's hard to manipulate that information rationally. That's where, again, Bishop already alluded to it earlier with PCWC. We want to make sure that you're understanding your potential. You can cope with your stressors that are occurring. You're working productively and fruitfully, and you're making a contribution to your community. All those are the 4 tenets of a healthy mindset. Healthy mental health, healthy, sound mind. That's what the effective mindset looks like. And Bishop, I'll say this as I know we're coming to a close. My prayer is for some of us, we need to press the reset button, the factory reset button. So you got your phones. I got my phone here. There's a factory reset button on here. You've been through some viruses, some scams, and things that have infiltrated your phone. Sometimes you got to go back and press the reset factory button. Become like the child again. And so that, Lord Jesus, help me so that I can manipulate this information, the information you even heard today on Spirit and Mind. Help me so that I can make the decision not to stay where I'm at, so that I can move forward. Yes, I was traumatized. We know that. We admit that. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, it hurts. But I make the decision that I am going to grow. And I thank God for the capacity that He has given me. And through this message and through this show, the broadcast, guess what happens? As you get information in, your capacity grows. Isn't that something? As you listen to the information in sound doctrine and the words that are knowledge and of wisdom, your capacity grows. Now we just ask, what are you going to do with it? Stop there, Bishop. That's the acronym CRAM. Communicate, relevant information, appreciate the situation, then manipulate the information rationally.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm reminded again. We want to reiterate that manipulate is not necessarily a bad word. We hear it used in bad ways, but manipulate is related to the word manual, like manual labor, as in or manicure, and so it means get a hand on it, get a grasp on it, and use it productively. Another name for it is wisdom, which is the effective application of knowledge and information to fulfill a particular purpose. And so manipulate, in other words, or if you want to hear church, work the word, work the word that you're hearing, and it'll work for you. And so that is our prayer. That is also our continual challenge. I know I count not myself to have apprehended or mastered. Just because we are serving as imparters of information doesn't mean we've mastered everything. Paul said, I continually discipline myself lest having preached to others, I myself become a castaway. So we're working on, I speak for me, self-care and all of that stuff, and working on cramming. Again, it's a workout. We're going to be working on this till Christ be formed in us. And so we're all a work in progress. And I would close with that in terms of manipulating the information. I'll close with what I cited earlier. Romans 8 and 18. He says, for I consider, again, reckon in the King James. When you look it up in the Koine Greek, it means I thought about it. This is a calculated risk decision of acceptable risk. I'm aware of the suffering. He says, but I reckon, I consider, this isn't emotionally driven. This is a result of critical thought. I consider that the sufferings of the present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us. And because of that, I'm going to keep pressing. In other words, I'm making a decision that I want to keep growing. Even though I'm aware and have been acquainted with suffering, it will give the suffering extra victory if I stay stuck. And staying stuck will be more painful than making a decision to accept what happened and try to move forward. And so right there, he says in 18, I consider that the sufferings. And then in it goes on to 28, and he says, most church people know this, he says, listen to his thought, because I know that all things work together for good to them who love the Lord. All things. He didn't say all things were good. He said all things are working for good. If I make a decision that I want to use this as a growth thing on the other side of the trauma. It's not making light of the trauma, not at all. I think we're clear on that, but it's making the point that I can't stay here because it's blocking. I can't let what happened block my capacity indefinitely. And so then lastly, in verse 38, he says, so because of that, I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come. He said, I'm making a decision that I'm going to keep going and keep growing. And that's our prayer for us. That's our prayer for you. And that's one of the chief reasons that we do Spirit in Mind. That's all I got, Dr. Shepherd. Any concluding thoughts from you?
Yes, sir. We also want to make sure you're going to our Facebook pages, our social media pages. We do have a Spirit in Mind page. Go to our YouTube pages and make sure YouTube channels. And make sure that you check us out on that also. And we want to let you know we're continuing to prepare for some exciting news. Stay tuned, and you'll be hearing about that. So look us up. We'll be glad to help you you might say, man, I need just a little bit of oomph to get going. Go there, check us out. We're glad to help you give that little push that you need. Just remember, everything that we share on here is just for your educational, informational, inspirational. We're not trying to provide any form of treatment per se. We want to make sure that you go to your pastor or to your mental health professional for that. Yes, Bishop, that is it. Please look us up. We are so glad that you joined us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, family. By the grace of God, we'll see you next time on Spirit in Mind.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Spirit in Mind, and we're also on Instagram at Spirit in Mind Live. Join us next time for a new episode of Spirit in